In one of those quirks of nature, an eagle's egg was brought up with a clutch of eggs that belongs to the chicken in a farm. And of course, in time, all the eggs hatch, and the eagle grows up with the chickens. And it would do everything that the chickens would do. It would run around like the chickens, it would peck on the ground like the chickens, but it never flew, at least not high up like an eagle is meant to fly. And every so often, the eaglet would look up and it would see eagles flying, and it would remark to the chickens, and it would say, I wish I could fly like that. I wish I could fly like that. And there was a rooster, an old rooster that had been there for many years and had seen the eagle's egg being brought in. And one day, and so when the eaglet remarked this near the rooster said to it, you can actually fly like that. And the eaglet says, what do you mean? And he says, you're actually not a chicken. You're an eagle. You can fly like that. And I tell this story by way of trying to make the point that we are meant for more. We are not just meant to hover on the ground as human beings, but we're meant for higher things, for bigger things. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm introducing you to the idea of cultivating our intellectual life through reading. Now, these ideas of feeding our intellectual life through reading have been proposed by many authors. The one is Zena Hitz, who writes a book, Lost in Thought, The Hidden Pleasures of an Intellectual Life. And the second one is A.G. Satilange. He's a French author, and he talks about the intellectual life, its spirit, conditions, methods. And the idea which is proposed by these two authors is basically that we all do have an intellectual life. As human beings, we are material, but we are also spiritual. So the clothes, the cars, the food, all those other things, they take care of the material aspect of us. But then we also have a spiritual aspect, the soul. And this aspect of us is taken care of by pursuit of intellectual things. Now, sometimes the world is going to cheat us. That, of course, you're going to be very, very happy as long as you've got that big car, or as long as you've got 1.2 million followers. And there are people who believe this. And they say that once I'm making all this, I'm going to be a very happy person. But of course, as the millionaires are showing us over and over again, we actually need more than that. We need the virtue of friendship. We need to know that, we're coming back to a good home where we're accepted for who we are. These are things that popularly we say money cannot buy. And it is true. And yet, ironically, even though we know that we value more the things which we call money cannot buy, we still spend most of our day pursuing these things. So reading, in that sense, is a reminder. It reminds us, that hour that we spend reading every day reminds us to value these things that money cannot buy. Apart from, of course, also feeding our intellectual life and giving us that pleasure, such that you have not only the material pleasure, but also you're going to have the intellectual pleasure. Now, one more thing I also wanted to say about the importance, again, of us cultivating this reading culture is the temptation of seeing ourselves as instruments, beginning to see ourselves as a machine. In that very wonderful work of his, Charles Dickens, In Hard Times, Mr. Bounderby, talking about his factory workers, says, I see them as two hands and a stomach. Do you know that we can also do that to ourselves? When I look and I say that, oh, I'm a lawyer, oh, I'm an accountant, of course not. We are more than that. When we look at the children and we tell them, I want you to grow up, read, and become this person. Yeah, I want you to become a heart surgeon. I want you to become a nuclear physicist. I want you to become a teacher. The person is more than that. We are instrumentalizing ourselves. Teacher, doctor, lawyer is what we do. But us as ourselves, that core human is more than that. You can say, I want you to be a kind doctor. I want you to be a just judge. I want you to be a fair lawyer. Such that you realize that the adjectives fairness, just, kindness, those are what we are calling the fundamentals of the human person. Those are what makes us a human being. Because lawyer, judge, accountant, those ones will change over time. But justice, kindness, friendship, loving, those don't change. They will remain over time. Now back to the question of reading and intellectual life. When we're reading, that's what we are reminded of. Rather, the books that we read, if you're reading good books, that's what you're being reminded of. You're being reminded about kindness, justice, love, family, hope, trust. When we read books that feed into this greatness that we have in us, and they affirm to us about this greatness, and they affirm the values that we are trying to pursue. When we are constantly reading, you'll find that this kind of forms a foundation of who we are. It keeps reminding us, such that no matter what else happens, we always remember ourselves and who we are. So faced with an opportunity, for example, to be given 1 million shillings so that we cheat and we steal our project's money, we will remember who we are. And rather than value the kind of acclaim that is going to come once I get that billion into my account, I will value being able to look at my friends and the people around me by knowing that I turned down that billion, even though I will then continue just driving that small Toyota. And there are people like that around us. Now, am I saying that by reading, or people who read are naturally going to be more humane or necessarily more moral? Not as such. Of course, we ourselves will have to make the choice. What I am saying, though, is that when we read constantly good books, those books will remind us and they will accompany us through life. And now, when we talk about lifelong learning, this is what we are actually referring to. You see, if we keep trying to get the next MBA, the next PhD, all these, you'll notice that, of course, these qualifications, we are getting them for what? We're getting them so that we can get the promotion at work, or so that we can get better skills or whatever, but there's a purpose to them. That's what I'm calling instrumentalizing our lives, seeing ourselves as instruments, 2 hands and a stomach. But when we talk about lifelong learning, what we are now looking for is to acquire other values that feed into us as human beings. What I'm now calling about that, core humanity. And this is what we need to be thinking about when we think about lifelong learning. Reading does this. Reading enables us to acquire lifelong learning. And for this reason, it must be pursued so that we remain human beings and not machines.